For beginning, could you tell me a bit about your musical background? I've read something about jazz.
Yes, I started music quite a long time ago. Um, considering it something serious in my life a long time ago, and that happened when I started studying jazz vocals, quite in a serious way, like investing a lot of time in it. And I started in a music school in Milan, and then ended up doing a master in jazz vocals in Belgium, in the city of Ghent, at the conservatory. That is my musical background, as in for, education. But I guess at the same time, I've always had a curiosity and an interest for songwriting. And that was always reminding me that jazz was not something that I could identify with so much, being like a strongly American music and being rooted in a history that is pretty far from mine, being like a Southern European person and also like a 90s kid. So like growing up listening to all the 90s bands and MTV culture, I guess. So, jazz was great because it helped me to understand a lot about music. But at the same time, I think every time I was trying to write something, I was reminded that there was so much more in my musical background as a listener, So I guess, yeah, it combined with like other influences.
Yeah, keeping that in mind, how would you describe your own version of a singer-songwriter?
It's an interesting question. It's always hard to give definitions, but I think I find, and it's not necessarily a good thing. I find myself a quite eclectic writer, because indeed, like I like different things and I like to write in different ways as well. Maybe the label I like the most is art pop so far, but it's up for debate. I don't know. A bit of that, a bit of electronic influences, and some people say indie folk, so I take it. That's also true, I guess. Yeah.
What would you say are your sources of inspiration then? Is the 90s music TV in there?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, in the song form, for instance. I'm like such a sucker for catchy melodies and for choruses. I really like to sing the chorus, which for my first album, the one that we're playing tonight, is not always there. Like there's also loads of references from like orchestrated music and film music, perhaps. Like I really like to arrange, and that album was arranged with strings. So I guess there were different influences, especially for the arrangement and the production part of the work, that came also from like film music, arranged music. Yeah, hard to tell. There's a lot to soak in. Yeah.
With all these sources of inspiration and influences, what are your songs about?
That album, called Until We Fossilized, was mainly inspired by one thing that I read while I was living in Kathmandu, Nepal. I read that on the peaks of the Himalayas you can find seashells and marine fossils. So I didn't know about that, and it made quite an impact on me. Like, oh wow, you can find things from the sea on the peaks of the mountains. And yeah, then I learned the reason why, the fact that by like the plates clashed into each other, and then what used to be the seafloor became the peaks of the mountain. And I found it a very beautiful metaphor of the fact that everything is so interconnected and in a continuous evolution. But I got quite fond of that geological trip of mine. So there's that. There's a song about a stone, amethyst. There is a song about a bird. It's called Bird Song. It's about how humans have changed the habitats of some animal species. That's something I've been working on with my side project, which is an audiovisual project. And through that experience, I discovered many interesting stories of animals and of places in the world. So that album was certainly inspired by the natural world a lot. And I called it Until We Fossilize, which is not a prophecy of extinction or anything. It was just like, until we become fossils and maybe someone will find us on the peaks of the mountains. So something like that. It has hope rather than despair, and yeah, that was it. I'm now working on a new record, which is surprisingly a lot more personal. And so I guess the songs will be more about my experiences as a human who tries to survive being a human. I don't know.
Okay, let's talk about the upcoming material a bit later. As I understand, Until We Fossilize tour still has 4 stops.
This is the last stretch of this tour, yeah. I mean, this is the last stretch of the tour. And we have 4 more shows after this one, yeah.
Yeah, so how has it been for you to tour in the, we can, I think, say post-COVID?
Yeah, it's been interesting, unexpected in a way. Because as soon as COVID ended, we were on the road, basically. Because this album was made in early 2021 and then came out after the summer of 2021. So it was just right after the limitations went a bit more loose. But still, it started in the winter of 2021 and there was this Omicron. So the limitations started again. And it was very stressful at first. There were like a couple of tours, one in the UK and one more in Italy in the winter. They were very stressful because you never knew if the show would actually happen. It was always like, okay, the show is confirmed, it's going on, but we have to test before we get there. And it was all like, let's hope we're negative. And I must say, we never canceled due to COVID reasons. So we've been very lucky with that. And I was very lucky, man. I was very lucky. So it's been really good. And we played quite some shows, and went to quite some places. So it was really cool.
Yeah, how was the pandemic time for you as an artist?
Very inspiring. I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, it's been very sad. And I'm from the north of Italy, so it's been really, really dramatic. But it's been interesting and inspiring, as in, I think we're never going to get that time that we had at that moment, that free time. We're never going to get it again. So I'm happy I could live it in that way. Like, okay, I have a lot of time. What am I going to do? First of all, I slept a lot, which is great and gets you to be a lot more creative because you're relaxed and you're like, oh yeah, once I thought about panda bears, let's write about them. Like you could I had nowhere to be and I had no deadlines of any sort, I was starting really working on projects with a very relaxed pace because all deadlines got postponed, and it was essential for me for this work, this album. Yeah,
you mentioned that the upcoming music is gonna be more personal, so what was kind of your writing process for that music?
That music was written in between touring, and it was definitely more written with the urge of doing it by a certain timeline, not because I have any pressure from my record company or anything, but because I thought for myself that was good, or otherwise I would just be, the thing is, it takes quite a different mindset and quite a different managing of your energy to tour or to write, compose, produce, and so on. For me, I guess there are like some musicians that can balance the two at the same time, maybe. But most of the musicians I know also agree on the fact that, yeah, if you're touring, your energy is very much more focused on, keeping healthy and being on time, being focused on stage, and, keep your head relaxed, because it can get very stressful. And if you're writing, I like to be very chill and have nothing to do for a long time, like maybe a month in which I have nothing to do. But if I'm between shows, then it never happens. So I had to push myself, and that was a bit of a challenge that I liked to give to myself. And so the writing process was quite scattered. It took about a year to finish it, I think, because I didn't write like a massive amount of material, but it was more like, okay, I like this, let's put it aside, and then add stuff to the collection. And in the end, it felt like, okay, this is a collection that could become an album. So I started the pre-production together with a Belgian producer who's named Bert Vliegen. And we worked for a week and worked on these songs to prepare for the studio days. And then we went for a week to record these songs together with some musicians that are very dear to me. And yeah, we are in the middle of that. Yeah, we're in the middle of making that record. Yeah.
The recordings are still going on.
The recordings are, I would say, 98% finished, but there might be something that I still decide to add in the post-production period, which will be after this tour.
Yeah, as you said, that the themes are now more personal, but was there something about recording the album that has changed after the COVID?
For sure, yeah, for sure, completely different, because Until We Fossilize was mostly recorded remotely and from my house. It was mostly based on demos that I had made throughout the years, because this is my solo project that I've been planning to get to work on in the past, like, I don't know, maybe for the 2 years before I actually made it, I was planning to make it, but life was quite different for me at the time. I used to live in South Asia, in Nepal, and I used to work more with my side project, and kind of postponing until the moment would be the right one. And it finally came, but because of the pandemic, it happened that I just took these demos and started from there. So maybe adding things on those demos and then asking musicians, hey, can you record a bass line on this? Or can you record a viola and the cello? And these musicians sent me their tracks, and then I put them all in with the help of a sound engineer, of course, and then a fantastic mixing engineer and producer, Shazad Ismaili, in New York City, who mixed the album remotely. So we were on this Skype calls the whole time. And that process was very interesting and a great learning experience. But I also knew, especially after a long period of touring, that I wanted to have more of a human shared experience with the co-producer and the musicians and the recording engineer. So this time, and also now I had the possibility of working with a bit of a more relaxed budget because of my record deal. But before I just did it, I was unsigned and I was just financing everything myself, which is not that different now, but it's just perspective. Yeah, it changes a little bit, in your head, the fact that there is the possibility of publishing this album already. Yeah. Hopefully, yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times your travels in Nepal. So, yeah, how do you see that experience has influenced your artistry?
Yeah, big time, you know, like I think it was something I seeked as life experience. While I was studying, I felt like, oh, I would like to have an experience somewhere very different from here. And through a project, like a scholarship project that my school was facilitating, we could do an internship in some country far away. So I found a partner organization in Nepal, and I went there for 4 months. And that was an incredible experience. Like, it made me open all the doors, you know, that's all the limitations I was feeling were like gone. I felt like, wow, the world is in my hands. You know, I don't know, I was younger, a lot younger. So that's also a bit of that attitude, you know, of your like mid-20s. And I fell in love with that place. So after I finished my studies, I went back, and eventually I got married to a man from there. So I lived there 2.5 years. And yeah, I loved it. Yeah, and I still love it, and I still come and go, but we decided we would settle back in Europe, because this is also really nice to live in Europe and in Italy.
The new music almost recorded, and the tour in the last stretch. So how does the rest of 2023 look for you?
I wish I knew, but I guess my groupies are here. I guess I still see like another month of work for closing this album, and then I have a few projects ongoing mainly with my side project that is more in the performance art / theater realm. So I'm looking forward to take some time for that, because it's been quite hectic with working on my solo things in the past 2 years. So maybe taking a little bit more time for that. But at the same time, you know, once you plan the release of an album, then there's also a lot of work to do, even if you're not out there with it yet. So I guess I won't get bored. And I hope in the summer to play some shows. But I'm not sure we will do much with my solo project as Marta Del Grandi, but I'm also featuring on a project of an Italian band as a side musician. So I'm also looking forward for that. It's always interesting to see and to learn from people that are in the music industry from longer and have seen like different eras of this industry. So for sure that. And then hopefully in the early fall, I'll be able to say that I have a new album. But I don't know yet when that will be. But yeah, kind of around then. To me, across the ocean wide.